fork?
Okay, let's try this again. Welcome to Forking Off, the podcast for people who said no to just following orders, where we explore the very personal decisions behind leaving federal service, whether by choice or by force. Every departure has a story, and we're here to share them.
Hey, and welcome to this episode of Forking Off. Today we have with us Christina Mesesan. Christina, would you like to give us your bluff?
Yes, would love to. I want to say thanks for having me on, guys. This is fun. So, hi, Christina Mesesan, former FBI employee, started in 2008, left in 2021, and have since stayed a public servant, diving into the world of county law enforcement. Now I'm with LAPD, policing the police in the Inspector General's office.
Very cool. Christina, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your story of how you came to the Bureau?
I would love to. So my beginning happened like most people after September 11th. I was super impacted and wanted to do something for my country, and I wasn't sure what that was. I'm not someone who should be trusted around weapons, I joke. So I thought the military wasn't necessarily the best avenue for me to go to, right? Too much of a hothead Latina, I guess. But I realized an avenue of public service might be sort of the right way to go. I ended up finding this amazing graduate program out of New Jersey in Seton Hall. So while I was there, I ended up meeting a lot of different people. One of them was a former agency analyst, and she kind of told me a little bit about her job. And I had other friends of mine from my program that either went to the DEA as an analyst, others ended up going into the State Department. I landed in the FBI because at the time everyone was hiring. There was a big push. I think that was post 9/11 commission. So there was a huge push to get more intelligence personnel in there. And a lot of people sort of ask, like, how did that happen? I'm like, I applied online. Like, it's just one of the most non-FBI things ever. Like, I applied online, and somehow they thought, like, why not let this girl through? So
I love
very
it.
not
I
sexy.
love it.
Yeah, not sexy at all. It was definitely a punch in the gut because I had no experience in military. I'm also a West Coaster, so I had never experienced this paramilitary type of yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, here's the structure, here's chain of command. So it was very much a culture shock and took some time getting used to.
What were you doing in New York? Because you ended up back in LA. That's how we knew you. What was your timeline there? How did you get back?
Good question. I loved being on the East Coast. And there was a certain point where I got tired of having all of my leave be going home to visit family. I wanted to actually take a vacation, call it Catholic guilt, call it firstborn child. I felt like I had to be home to help out with family matters and all those types of things. And the truth was I missed LA. I love Los Angeles. I love my city, but I did work amazing things. And I actually have a funny story about my grad program that actually relates to the Bureau in actually a sexy way. There was a case that came out in I think it was like 2010, either 2009 or 2010, where all of the Russian spies were arrested there was a New York arrest, there was a DC arrest, and there was a Seattle arrest. This is all unclassified. You can Google it if you want to. I'm not disclosing anything. This is all unclassified. But there was the Russian government had planted a bunch of folks in to basically infiltrate society and like try and get Russian policies passed through either folks that were working in this like the society page or society sort of world or in local government down in DC. Seattle, I'm not entirely sure like what they're doing in Seattle, but I guess Seattle may have a potential opening for someone who could influence policymakers over there. It was one of the coolest things ever because that was really where you saw, I think, the Bureau at its best. The next day, when the newspaper had come out, I remember getting an email from the Alumni Association of Seton Hall, and they said, hey guys, we're getting word that an unflattering article is going to come out about one of our students. Please know that not everything is what it seems, and this is still ongoing or whatever. And I was like, what is going on? Turns out one of the people arrested in DC was somebody who was a year below me in my program.
Oh my gosh.
Was spotted, assessed, and looked at by the Russian government to be like, this kid could be a great, which now I sit back and I think about it, I'm like, oh my God, that absolutely everybody in my program went into government service. And starting to think about it, I'm like, they did a really poor job of preparing us for the fact that we could be approached and someone could attempt to bring us over to the other side.
wow.
So it was just this amazing thing where I'm like, oh my God, I know that guy. I've had drinks with that guy. Like, this is wild. So that's definitely one of my most wild New York stories where I was part of a big operation that arrested a spy that I've had drinks with.
Oh, I love it.
Was
Okay,
that the
so-
Ghost Stories?
Yes, Operation Ghost
Nice.
Stories. Yes.
That's so cool. I didn't know that you were a
Yeah.
part of that.
Yeah, I have this framed thing of the New York Post had a picture of the main girl, because again, like, you want something interesting to read, like, go read about it, because there's a girl named Anna Chapman. She was the person that got the most attention. She was a very attractive girl, like, working in these, high society types of things, and she had a lot of leaked photos of her. And so one of it was like this edited photo, but it was still very provocative of her in the front of the New York Post, and it goes, Moscow on the Hudson. So we all blew it up and like we signed it, and like, so it's like framed. I found an opportunity to make my way over to Sacramento. The Bureau was looking to sort of create kind of mini headquarters, like regional hubs, where I think they recognized trying to get a big picture understanding of everything will be difficult. So let's do it regionally. And so I went to the attempt at it in Sacramento. And I saw this as an opportunity not only to get home or back to California, but it would give me a new chance to try, at the time, was a new version of domain. For those who don't know what domain is, it's just looking at things from, instead of a small, like your area, a giant area. So I thought this would be cool. And I really enjoyed it. In the Bureau's infinite wisdom, it decided after 18 months they didn't need it anymore, because
of course,
that's what happens. And even though it was a great experience, and yes, it did not last long. What was great about it is, one, I was able to get back to California, but two, I also met, one of my mentors that I still know today, Arlene Gaylord. But when they decided that the hub was something they no longer wanted, they were nice enough to give us the option to decide where we wanted to go. They said, okay, well, we'll pay for you to go wherever you want to go. And I said, I'm going home. 2 pieces of advice that she'd given me. The first that I think can resonate with anyone who is in a tumultuous time is, she would say, I'm serving drinks. This particularly came the first time when our little regional group, when headquarters decided it was disbanded. We were all really devastated by it. And she said, you guys, you got to just keep on serving drinks. Everything's going to be tumultuous. And if you don't keep a level head on you, everybody's going to take cue off of you. Think of yourself as a flight attendant. When turbulence is going on, a flight attendant is going to tell you to sit down, buckle your seatbelt, and they're going to serve you drinks. They're the representation of how the flight is going to be going. They're the ones that have to keep everybody calm. That couldn't have been more true on the day that Comey was fired, because the irony of it all is Arlene had come to LA that day with Director Comey, and they were doing a DEI hiring event. So she was doing a talk in the main conference room, and all of a sudden she's in her talk. The purpose of her talk is sort of how to handle really tough obstacles in the organization and so the tips and tricks that she has. And she talked about serving drinks. As she's talking, you hear ping, 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 like phones binging, zinging all over and that somebody eventually raises their hand, looks at the phone, and they go, Director Comey was just fired. And somehow, I don't know how she did it. Somehow she was able to get through that speech without breaking us, because he put her there, right? He brought her with him. He put her there. And somehow she was able to get through the entire thing and looked at her phone, and she said, I can't believe I just did that, but serve drinks, continue to serve drinks, guys. And then it just made it more relevant, because she said, more than ever right now, people around you are going to be panicking, because pretty much everybody who had come to her to see her talk were mostly supervisors. And she said, right now, your team, your staff is going to look at you to see if you're panicking. You can't panic, because if you panic, then they lose focus on the mission, and they need for you to show that you're still focused on the mission, and this isn't going to impact it, and everything's going to be fine. You need to move forward. So that always really took me to heart, the serve drinks. The other part that she said, there's an element of this that can be relevant to whatever it is that makes you feel good, but it's very much like a Latina thing. The idea of if you look good, you feel good. Always, whenever I would be upset about something, because Arlene is very much a tough love love kind of a person, she'd look at me and she'd just say, put on lipstick. Because the minute you put on your lipstick, you're going to look better. You're going to feel better. You just got to fake it till you make it and put on your lipstick. And
I love
I
it.
was like, all right, I'll go grab my lipstick and I'll put it on. Put on your lipstick. Like, you can have your pity party, but once you're done, go grab your lipstick, put it on, and then start serving drinks.
I am going to remember that.
Yeah.
Philip, we got to get you some lipstick,
Get you some lipstick.
tray of drinks. We're good to go.
Works for me.
So yeah, the Comey, yeah, that day was tough for everyone. We had movers at our place, and
Wow.
Comey was on his way up to the 14th floor, and I had to leave because they couldn't get our couch out of our apartment.
Oh my gosh.
As I'm heading back, I'm getting texts of, get back here. Comey just got fired. Get back. But we did. We looked to all of the supervisors to be that calm, keep it together. We got a job to do.
Yeah. It literally I mean, this sounds really dramatic, but it felt like someone died. Like, it
Oh, yeah.
legitimately felt like someone died, because just you didn't have a chance to say goodbye. And even though he was in LA, like, so we had the benefit of, one of the funniest things that happened is, like, I just happened to be standing like in his exit path, and as he's walking by, he says loud enough, but like under his breath, but loud enough knowing that we'd all hear, where he goes, I never liked the guy anyways.
Yes. Yes, I have heard the story.
It was the best, and I was like, yeah, I don't like him either. It was the best. But like, the day after, it literally felt kind of like someone died, and I just wanted, and I wanted to give space for people to be sad about it, but I also wanted to be like, okay, he was a great leader. Take your time to be sad, but he was a good leader, and so let's just continue to make him look good by doing our job.
So you didn't leave then.
I didn't leave
But
then.
eventually you did leave the bureau. So what happened?
Ooh, you've heard the analogy before of when you put a frog into cold water and then start to turn on the heat, the frog's going to sit in that water and basically just boil to death. But if you put a frog into boiling water, it'll jump out immediately, recognizing, right? And I think that analogy works with why I made the choice to leave, because there were small things that you slowly started to notice, or at least I started to notice, happen right around 45's entry. And this isn't a sake of like, he who shall not be named. I don't say his name because I just don't want to acknowledge him. So he's 45 to me. Now he's 47. So 45's entry was hard for a lot of folks. And this isn't a matter of, I didn't like him, I didn't vote for him, so therefore I don't want to follow what he has to say. It's not like that. I mean, I personally didn't vote for Bush, but if it wasn't for Bush, I wouldn't have had a job, right? So I just don't think he had respect for the seat that he was in, and I still don't think that now, and that to me means something. But there were little things that you started to notice. I think we as a Intel community had worked really hard to fight for a seat at the table. And another thing that Arlene had always told me was that if ever I had acted for her or like sat in for her, her biggest thing was, you sit at that table. I sit at the table. You don't sit in the back if you're acting for me. You sit at that table because I sent you in to speak for me, to talk for me, to represent me. And if you're going to represent me, you better represent me as I want to be, which means you sit at that table. I slowly started to notice that our seat at the table was being taken away, that rules were being changed. We are not recognizing the advice of the 9/11 Commission and not recognizing the need for us to be able to share information and to be strategic about how we approach things. And I saw that was slowly starting to diminish by changing the requirements. The goalpost to promote kept on getting moved. You could see that these grand promises of, we're going to make analysts a senior executive level, and they talk about it and they try it, and then immediately be removed because the whole idea is, well, we tried it, but it didn't work, so now we're not going to do it anymore. And it's like, yeah, you tried it for 9 months. How can you tell if it worked or if it didn't work? And so I saw these sort of signs of demonstrating that you're trying to make an effort, but recognizing really quickly it was just for show. It was just to check a box to say that you did it, so that you can now say that, okay, we don't need analysts in this capacity anymore. And I think the biggest thing is that I had a friend, or I still do, I should say, who worked for DEA, and the highest, I guess, promotion that you could get to DEA is at a GS level 14. They don't have anybody that really goes beyond that. And I recognized when kind of talking to her that there seemed to be sort of this mirroring of this structure of like, we're going to take this the intel component out. We'd rather spend more money on putting it back into operations and put it back into the agents. And so just seeing that small trickle effect of it was what had me really a bit disheartened because and I'm not sure, I feel like you guys know this based on when you had come in. My supervisor at the time in New York came from Coast Guard. He instantly came into being a supervisor in the Bureau because he met the KSAs, because he had done the things he needed to do at the Coast Guard, but he didn't know how to do Bureau operations. At the time when I was a line analyst supervisors didn't have good reputations because they all came in from other government agencies but had never done the Bureau work. So I felt like my generation of analysts, of SIAs, had done the work, like understood what it was like. And so you finally had reached this point where like you had a really great cadre of SIAs that knew how to do things, that could make decisions, that had impacted ops, and you're telling them you're going to give them an opportunity to grow, and then you instantly take it away. See, that's where it really started to click for me, that maybe this is a time for me to start to reconsider, because as much as I loved being an SIA, I loved my job, it also got really hard to hear no. And it also got really upsetting to know that I had gone above and beyond in terms of checking off the list of criteria to be a 15 level supervisor, going through all the same thing that all the agents were doing, and wasn't getting any bit of consideration. And it was really getting frustrating. So that was sort of the clue of, let me start looking at where my skills can be used outside of the organization.
Well, you were a great supervisor. You weren't mine, but you were
Thank
very
you.
encouraging
Thank
while
you.
we were there. And you were the first person for me to talk to in LA, because they say, oh, you're going to LA. And you're like, well, I'm showing up in 2 weeks. Where do I go? And who's going to pick me up at the door? Because I think you had even told me like, yeah, so we'll make sure somebody gets you, because they didn't get me my first day.
Yes, that is true. I showed up and they're like, oh, that's right, you started today.
Oh, great. So, is there anything that would have made you change your mind, change your decision?
I would have always eventually have left. I knew I didn't want to go back to headquarters. I have aging parents. I knew that I couldn't go back east. And it's not, I mean, I could, they'd be very supportive of it, but call it Catholic guilt, call it generational trauma. I just didn't feel like it was okay for me to leave. And plus I love my hometown. I knew that at some point in time, there was going to be an end, unless for some reason the Bureau decided that it was going to offer more opportunities for field growth and advancement. So I think the question is, when would I have left? My choice to leave when I did really came from this notion of, I got a lot of no's for a lot of 15 positions that I had put in for. And I had really noticed and seen that the people that they were going to, it was very clear that there was a pre-existing relationship that was there. Every job has a level of politics, especially in a leadership position. And there's an element of that I'm okay with, but there were certain people I didn't want to align myself with. The folks that were getting into the positions were aligning themselves with what another colleague of mine coined as blue flamers, the folks that are just looking to make their way up. And I didn't want to be a blue flamer, but at some point in time, you get a little tired of hearing no. And when I lived in New York, that point in time, especially, this was the height of Al Qaeda, someone was always trying to blow up New York. I worked a lot with the CT analysts because there was always like a command post or something they needed, and they wanted someone that had their stripes and had access to all the different databases. So I was always working a CP for like some attempted terrorism attack. And I got to know a lot of the CT analysts, and they were grumpy, and they were bitter, and they were just salty dogs. And I told myself, if I ever get like that, it's the time for me to leave. And I felt like I had to motivate myself to be encouraging to my team the last maybe year and a half. And when I have to hide that I don't believe what I'm saying, maybe now it's time for me to take the step and leave. That was hard. And it was a long process. It took a while for me to figure out what my skill set could even lend itself to, because the Bureau is very good at making you see where you're useful within its organization, but not seeing how you're useful outside of the organization. It took me some time to figure out how my skill set could be transferable. But yeah, I mean, I would have always left. I think it was just a matter of when. And when I had to convince myself to be positive to my team, that was the deciding factor for me, because I didn't feel like I wanted to lie to them.
I get that.
Well, as somebody else who was a CT analyst during that time, I do have to say I can't blame them for being grumpy.
Totally. No, totally. I mean, I get it. It was a tough time. Like, it really was. And I just wanted to give them some weed or something, but I get it. I completely understand.
What did you end up doing? What have you been doing since then?
How I ended up going where I went is kind of funny. I had initially applied for a job at the place that I'm at now and didn't get it. But following advice from Arlene, she said, why don't you reach out to them and ask, why didn't you get it? Like, what's the feedback, so that you can build up your resume for it? And so I did. I reached out and I said, can I connect with you? Will you mentor me? Will you help me out with opportunities or learning experiences or trainings or whatever that I can go to build up my resume so that I can be attractive in this field? As an aside, the job that I applied for was to be an assistant inspector general. For the easiest way to equate it, where I realized that I really liked that line of work, was as a supervisor, I would go on office inspections all the time. And I really liked it. Everyone thought I was nuts, but I thought there was something really exciting about going to an office, identifying ways that they were really successful and good at things, and like take that back and bring it home. Then also identifying where you could do better. I really like that notion of internal accountability to make yourselves run smoother and better and stronger. That very much was how things worked at the Inspector General's office for LAPD. Anyways, I didn't get the job, but I connected with the IG at the time. We were connected for a good couple of years. One day he sends me a message and he says, there is a vacancy at the 5th District, Los Angeles County. The supervisor there is looking for someone to do their public safety policy work. And I would like to recommend you, this is something that you're interested in? And I thought, yeah, this is cool. Like, I think I can do this. It's policy development, which there are elements of what we did in our job that kind of worked like that. So I thought, why not? I will be the first one to say I was very much not happy in that job. I went from a job where I had to motivate myself to go to work because I wanted to be there to support my team, to motivating myself to get out of bed because the job was just that horrible. When leaving the organization, or when leaving anything you've done for 13 years, it's a real kick in the gut of how different other people do things. When I left the Bureau, I realized some things that the Bureau did really well. And one thing that the Bureau does very well is it onboards well, and it has standardized things very well. You're still going to be able to log on the computer and find something in the Guam RA if you want to. So you could find something at whatever league at if you wanted to. This was not the case where I went. I wasn't prepared for what the world looked like outside. And because I was so unprepared for it, there was really no way I was ever going to succeed in that job. And by the time I had recognized that it was too late, there was no redeeming yourself. I realized very quickly I needed to find something else. If I was going to succeed, I needed to find a way out of there. And they recognized it too. I appreciate that there was an element that they understood that, hey, we should have done better. I was the first new person to come in a very long time. So I think there wasn't this understanding of we have to onboard her. Like, she's not just going to know. From that point, I ended up going to the probation department for maybe about 8 months or so. And then I eventually transitioned over to where I am now with LAPD.
Philip, did you have
No, I don't have
something?
anything.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Sorry. Made a face.
That's just how I look.
So what's next with everything for you? Do you think you'll ever go back to the Bureau?
My next steps, I realize that I would very much like to eventually continue on the Inspector General route. I know that I'll stay in public service, that for sure. I think I'll always be a public servant. I remember in high school, right when you're graduating, someone had asked, well, what do you want to do when you get out? Like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, well, I want to help people. I don't know how that happens. And someone was like, you're going to be a nun? And I was like, no, that's not happening. But I've always known that like helping people is something that I've wanted to do. I think what I especially realized in working for the county and seeing how very much, especially during 45 and then now as 47, the immediate impact that a decision that he makes instantly flows its way down into the field is really upsetting. And because I believe in our checks and balances, I believe in how our government works. And there's a part of me that wants to stay in that, to fortify it and to make it stronger and to have people feel confident in their government. Seeing how things ran at the county and with the city of Los Angeles, seeing how everything operates, I feel like an obligation as someone, as a responsibility to the constituency, to the American taxpayer, to the voter, whomever it is that you voted for. My hope is that in the next 5 to 7 years, I'll be in an IG somewhere, hopefully less. Would I love to be an IG for the federal government? Absolutely. I think that would be great. Absolutely not now. I wouldn't come back during this administration, to kind of circle back to your question, not this administration. And I think it would depend what the next administration looked like. And again, this has nothing to do with who's a Republican or who's a Democrat. I worked under Bush, I worked under 45, I've worked under Democrats, I've worked under Republicans. Catherine Barger was a Republican, right? I've worked under all of it. It doesn't matter to me who you voted for. It matters to me what you're doing with that vote that someone entrusted with you. I think if the Bureau asked, I don't know if the Bureau asked me to come back, but if I saw that there was a circumstance where I trusted the administration, I trusted who the head of the DOJ was, who the head of the FBI was, if I felt like they were there for the right reasons, then absolutely. I mean, I've stayed boring for a reason. Trust me. Do I want to spark up a doobie right now super bad? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I haven't. I've stayed boring for a reason. But
Stay eligible for the clearance.
Staying eligible for it, trying to, in case I'm needed, I'll stay eligible for that clearance. So I never say never. And Kim, who you and I both know, we had drinks not too long ago together. She was just sharing with me how she's doing with everything that's happening. And she had said, I feel like I have the urge to want to stay because I think at some point in time, they're going to need people to help rebuild. And I respect that. There is nothing wrong with someone who says, I've made peace with it and it's time for me to move on. And if other people feel the calling to stay, I'm not going to judge anybody on it. Yeah. So I think I would, but depending on sort of what the world looks like and how much needs to be fixed or modified or changed or whatever, I have to recognize too that maybe I'm not the right person for that job. I don't know what things are going to look like when the dust settles. I just hope that it doesn't take that long for the dust to settle.
You had mentioned in the future, you also might want to go back to your dad's home country.
Yeah.
And do what?
I know, it sounds crazy. I have been working on getting my Romanian citizenship. First, it started off as like kind of not a joke, but like I genuinely thought Kamala was going to win. Prior to the elections, I had been sort of seeing how Ireland was now offering, I think it was like $23,000, 23,000 pounds.
Yes, it is. It was around that. I've seen it.
Yeah, super random thing to be like, hey, we'll pay you this if you come live on one of our like slowly sparsed islands. Kind of like they were doing like
I remember.
like
yes, we talked about this, Philip.
Yeah. So because how they're like Italy was doing like the dollar euro or the euro whatever to like come and buy it. So like Ireland's trying to do the same thing. And I was like, 1, I love the Irish. 2, I love their politics. I'm down for it. Like I'll move to Ireland. So then I started researching, can I as an American just move to Ireland? Like what would it take? Long story short, I saw that they have an agreement called like the European economic something. So if you are a part of the European economic whatever, if you're a country that's a member of this, then you could very easily move to Ireland and be a part of this $23,000, buy some little cottage and move to the tiny little islands of Ireland. And Romania was one of those places. So I was like, I should see about what it would take to be a Romanian citizen. So I started doing some more research. Come to find out, I technically am already a citizen because my dad never relinquished his citizenship when he moved to the States during communism. But there's, of course, like lots of paperwork that needs to happen in order for me to like have my citizenship. Talking to my sister, who is also very much like, at some point in time, if things get crazy, we need an exit strategy. We need to get the heck out of here. But as a side project, and I don't know if you guys knew this about me, but I actually taught at a cooking school, and I still do.
I knew
started,
you cooked. I knew
yeah,
you like cooked and baked, but I didn't know you taught.
I've had a relationship with that company for almost like 20 years now. And I've been teaching there for the past like 13 years or so. And my sister teaches there as well. And she also works with food at the LA Food Bank. But my dad's village is a village that all of the grandparents have kind of passed and the folks have moved their way back into the city. So I thought, okay, well, if we can pool our money together once we get our citizenship, buy a house in the village, maybe we can come up with some sort of a way to purchase, eggs from the lady down the street, and then the milk from the person up the street, and then the honey from the neighbor next door, and do some sort of an Airbnb kind of a situation where we'll teach you how to cook traditional Romanian food in like a different way, but then also give you the chance to be in the Romanian countryside,
We'll
right? Yeah.
We're there.
Where you can just come and we'll offer a nice setting for you where you can do some nice hikes and maybe ride a horse. Eventually, we're both sort of working towards that and like figuring out what that looks like. But we're almost done with the Romanian citizenship process than I would like. So, yeah.
Christina, thank you so much for
Yeah,
talking
my
with
pleasure.
us and sharing your story. I do just want to ask, like, is there anything else that you'd want to add or any advice that you'd like to give to anyone else?
I want to say that I loved my time in the Bureau. I still hold it so dear to my heart. It was such a beautiful place to work. The people there are really what made it amazing. And I often get very antsy and apprehensive when you go to a place and they say, oh, we're all like a family here, because it's an immediate red flag. Okay, immediate red flag. But the Bureau did feel like my family. And the example I'll give to this is in 2022, my brother had been very sick for a very, very, very long time. In 2022, my brother had passed away. And we as a family had decided that we wanted to take his ashes to Romania and have him be there with my grandparents, who he loved very much, and have them be there with him. And it happened really fast. The decision to have his memorial service, buy a plane ticket, get to like, it all was just like in rapid succession. My dad is very much, this happened, we're making it happen, we're doing it now. And because it was happening so fast, I didn't know whether or not we had enough time to get the paperwork we needed done. And by this point, I had been out of the organization for like 2.5, maybe 3 years by this point. I just remember making a phone call, and before I knew it, I had someone who used to work in the Bucharest Liga giving me a call, who was like a former analyst, because they knew someone from LA. And then I had someone else from headquarters giving me a call. And then I had someone from somewhere else in the San Diego office who knew about something else. And the next thing I knew, I literally had people from the entire organization. I'm like getting emotional thinking about it. I had a network of people helping me figure out and navigate how I was going to be able to legally be able to get his remains to where they needed to be. And I didn't have to worry about it. And it was amazing. And I feel like I know that if I did that right now, like if something happened where I called someone, I would get the same response. I have no words for that. I genuinely have no words for that. My gratitude in
that's
that
one
moment
of
was
the
amazing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's one of the amazing things about the Bureau. For being an organization that is 35,000 or more strong, it is a small
Yeah.
world.
It's definitely, and I would say that, to take that to anyone who may have left, if you're thinking about leaving, or if you're thinking about staying, or you're not sure what your future may look like. I don't know if men feel the same way. I mean, Philip, you can weigh in, but I think for women were very much brought up in this idea of, if you do the good work, someone will recognize you and reward you for it. Like, women in general have been very bad at being assertive about what we feel like, what we're owed, or what we have worked towards. And then as analysts, especially, it was very much, don't talk about what you do, don't tell anybody what you do, like it's all a secret, you can't, whatever. If I could give advice to anybody, going back to this notion of like, someone or someone who has left that you may not know, don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to ask for guidance, and don't be afraid to sort of talk it through. I don't regret having left the organization. I don't regret having had that very, very, very hard time. It has made me a better and stronger person. I'm happy to share that experience with whomever. The biggest advice that I could give to anybody is, don't be afraid to ask for help, because that's what I didn't do. I didn't ask for help. The analysts in the Bureau are going to help. Like, I think that's the one thing that we as analysts worked really hard to get where we were. And same thing with SOSs, like, I think we understand each other in a way. There's a bond there that is very different, I think, and we're always willing to help in any way we can. So, and that goes for anybody who may be listening, who doesn't know me, like, hey, I'm more than happy to chat with whomever wants to chat and give solicited advice.
Christina, thank you so much. You've given some great advice with the keep serving drinks, and don't forget, ask for help.
Yeah.
So,
and put on lipstick, Philip.
Put on
nice
lipstick. Philip, you got it.
As soon as we get off of here, I am going to the store.
Fantastic.
What do you have any color recommendations?
I think with the shirt you're wearing, I'd say a nice plum. I think it'd look great on you.
Plum sounds good. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Forking Off. To our listeners still in government, remember, your integrity is worth more than your TSP. Leaving doesn't mean giving up on public service. It just means finding new ways to serve.
Until next time,
keep your ethics,
keep your dignity,
and we'll keep telling these stories.
If you're a former Fed with a story to tell, or you're wrestling with your own ethical crossroads, reach out to us at info@forkingoff.com.
Today's episode was created, produced, and edited by Jill and Philip Fields. Special thanks to our guest, Christina Mesesan. You can find more information about this episode at forkingoff.com. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Mastodon, LinkedIn, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Join us Monday, November 10th.
As we sit down with Mike Johnson. Not that one.
And that's when I found out that my office was being dissolved and we would no longer be part of the department. Probably a lot of us are trying to figure out, like, what do all these skills that I accumulated, what do they mean in the real world? And where do I go from here? And how do I leverage those skills? If you are a veteran, I think there are some things you can be looking at to use in any facet of life, but especially in this time. Like, don't suffer in silence, don't suffer alone. Like, it's a trying time, but I think we kind of all do better when we're working together.